Dante wrote, "The path to paradise begins in hell." Join Deacon Don Prendergast and David Fortin as they discuss the tools men need to build the domestic church and the spiritual weapons to defend it. This is Through the Fire.
Hey, welcome to another episode of Through the Fire. I'm David Fortin, joined with my good friend, Deacon Don Prendergast.
Hey.
Hey, buddy. It's good to be with you.
How's it going, Dave?
It's good to be with you, man. And, before we get started, I just want to say...
Dave, it's good to be with you, too.
Well, thank you, my friend. I want to say congratulations and welcome home to one of my best friends in the world, Trace Big Guns Chamberlain. He lives down in Louisiana. He's a member of the he's actually the founder, one of the founders of the Oilfield Ironmen Riding Club. Great motorcycle,
Nice.
Great motorcycle ministry that also cares for the men and women of the oil fields. And they do a lot of great charity work. So Trace, thank you for all the great work that you do. You have the heart of a lion. And I know that he took the Dismas as his confirmation name. The good thief. And the man he's just a true blessing.
Those guys that work in the oil fields, I mean, that job is no joke.
No.
It really is.
No.
That job is no joke.
Nope. And he's always trying to bring Christ into people's lives by these short little YouTube videos. He does a great job. Fantastic.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Just kind of like you, Deacon Don, with your backyard ministry. Trace has the longest commute I've ever heard of. He drives from Louisiana over to New Mexico for his job. So
that's insane.
Yeah,
that is nuts.
Yeah, he's got some time to think. He's got some time to pray.
God bless him.
Yeah, I consider him my spiritual bodyguard because he's always praying for me. But you know what, Deacon? Not everybody's as happy-go-lucky as Trace Chamberlain. Okay, there are some difficult people in this world.
Yes, there are.
And you and I have been talking, and I want to ask you, what does the first commandment have anything to do with dealing with difficult people?
Well, I mean, Dave, that's a loaded question. I mean, the first commandment is huge.
Yeah.
Here's really the starting point. How many people really take their faith seriously? I was listening to, there's a very popular psychologist slash lecturer slash clinical therapist, Jordan Peterson. I mean, a lot of people have heard of his name. And for the longest time, everybody would keep asking him, "Hey, Jordan, do you believe in God?" Now, this past year, his wife, actually, she came into the faith. She was confirmed at the Easter Vigil, Tammy Peterson. And we still have our hopes out for Jordan. But people would ask him, "Do you believe in God?" And he would never answer the question straightforward because he would stop right there. And he said, "Well, it depends on what you mean by the word believe. Are you saying a series of statements? Is that what you mean by believe? Just a list of words? Or is it deeper than that?" And he would answer by saying he lives his life as if everything contained within sacred scripture is true. Belief can be an incredibly weak descriptive word. Because what do you believe in? Do you believe in the concept, but you're not going to live it? Do you believe in the words, but you don't want to apply them into your own life? So his answer is, he doesn't even like the question, "Do you believe in God?" He just simply says, "I live my life as if everything contained within sacred scripture is absolutely true, and my eternal soul is dependent upon it." And I tell you, that's a pretty profound thing to say.
Yeah.
So
I do believe that he will eventually come to the church.
Oh, yeah.
because and it's like you said, he's committed to the truth. He is committed to finding that truth.
Right.
And seeking you shall find.
Yes. Yeah. I'm, you know what? I mean, we're kind of getting a little bit off topic, but my gut is kind of telling me he doesn't want to cloud the conversation with a specific religious affiliation because he is straddling the fence, trying to join and find common ground, and he's trying to integrate, at least this is my impression, he's trying to integrate the psychological mental health profession with sacred scripture and 2,000 years of teachings of Christendom. He's trying to show that, exactly what Christianity is teaching will bring you to healthy living regarding your mental health. And I wonder, I don't have any proof of this, of course, but I wonder if he's deliberately shying away from having any particular religious affiliated label on him, more so than he already has, because he grew up in Canada and I think he's Episcopalian by birth or something like that. But the fact that Tammy entered the Roman Catholic Church, I think that says a lot. But anyway, we're getting off topic. Let's get back to the conversation. So you wanted to know, where does the first commandment bring us guidance, and how does the first commandment bring us clarity on dealing with absolutely difficult people in our lives? And the answer, really, it's a big one. So I started off by saying, well, how do we look at the faith? And how do we read and how do we understand the first commandment? So everybody pull out your trusty Catechism of the Catholic Church and open up to Article 1, Life in Christ, Part 3, the first commandment. And what we will find is, it says here, the first commandment: you shall worship the Lord your God, and him alone shall you serve. Right there is a truckload to unpack. If we're going to live by this, if we're genuinely going to try to live by this, we can just take the one commandment right there and we can unpack it. And we have to ask ourselves, how do we define worship? How do we define God? How do we define service? And how do we define the concept of only him? And so if we're going to really dig into this, we have to take a sobering look at ourselves, and we have to really understand that for all of the history of humanity, the truth is we are a people that worship. We are. You go back to the ancient pharaohs and Mayan temple. I mean, it doesn't matter where you look. We are a people that worship. It's just reality. Mm-hmm. The question then, and when we start putting everything into context and we understand how over the millennia, we go all the way back to the time of Abraham, because the time of Abraham is kind of where we see the birth of the Hebrew people. We go back to the time of Abraham. And then, of course, after him, we go to Moses, and then we go on and on. But really, if we go back to that time, the time of Abraham, the time of Moses, we definitely see this growth in understanding who we are as a human people and the fact that we do worship. And we start coming little by little by little into relationship with the God of the universe. And so we kind of have to start with, how committed are we to really leaning on God, properly worshiping him, properly serving others through how God has described we should serve. And so, I mean, Dave, this is huge. We look around and we see we definitely are a species of people that worship. I mean, what, you don't think that the Super Bowl is a form of worship? I mean, really, I hate to pick on the Super Bowl. Everybody loves the Super Bowl.
I don't
or the
I don't know
World
if we can
Series.
even say that, because
What?
the whole Super Bowl thing, it's the big game. We got to call it.
Yeah,
that.
the big game. Yeah. But I mean, just
No,
consider it.
Yeah, it's
You got people that dress up, they
Yep.
wear costumes, they paint their bodies up or whatever, and where do they go to? They go to a gigantic arena,
right.
right? We all grew up with that anecdotal quote and on the seventh day, God created football.
Yeah.
Right? We all remember that. If
Sure.
we're of a particular age, we all remember growing up with that expression.
Yep.
And so, don't tell me that we're not a people that worship. The question is, what do we worship? Where are our priorities? And the Super Bowl and the World Series is, Game 7 of the World Series and the Super Bowl. Those two events, perfect example. And if you want to look at something very, very recently, how about the Olympics?
Yeah,
How about the Olympics?
that was a nightmare.
Absolutely, it was a nightmare, which is a whole nother conversation. I mean, I firmly believe there is nothing new under the sun, and all of the absolute pagan debauchery that we are seeing now has always been there. What seems to be happening is that in our generation, it's not hiding anymore. Instead of the sinful pagan behavior, instead of it being in hiding out of public view, now it's just right out in the open. I mean, that's the part that kind of is just mind-boggling, how there's no shame anymore. But again, we're getting off topic. All right, let's get back to this. So the first commandment, you shall worship the Lord your God, and him alone shall you serve. So if we unpack that, if we take a look at the fact that we are a people that worship, then the next question is, well, who are we going to worship? Are we going to worship a particular God? Or are we going to worship ourselves? Or are we going to worship a false God? Because this is important for us to understand. And when we choose to align ourselves away from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, when we choose to align ourselves away from, in worship and in service, the God that's been revealed to us through Jesus Christ, when we choose to align ourselves and to worship, and the worship can be very simple, it's how we live. Let's not muddy the waters and make this complicated. We can talk about ritual behavior, we can talk about rules to live by, but let's just cut through the nonsense and just simplify things for the sake of this conversation. Worship equates to how you live. It's as simple as that. Because how you live is going to impact what you believe. And what you believe is going to impact how you worship. And it's just going to go round and round and round in a giant circle, and it's going to build on itself. And so the opposite of worldly pagan worship is also just as true. If you say, I am going to make a sincere, concerted effort to live my life, even though it's countercultural, I'm going to make a concerted effort to live my life according to the teachings of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God revealed in the New Testament through Jesus Christ, the God that has been revealed through the teachings of the apostles and the fathers of the Catholic faith, and that which has been handed down through the treasury of faith, what has been taught to us through the councils, what has been given to us over and over and over again, and has been reaffirmed through the many bishops. If we're going to focus on that, which I think we can agree is the preferred way to focus, well, then we can start to address, how do we deal with difficult people? And Dave, I don't know about you, but sometimes the most difficult people are people in your own family.
Oh yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
let's not forget, Jesus made it abundantly clear that father would be turned against son, mother against daughter, brother against sister, because the message of salvation, when it's brought forth, especially to a people who are content in that steady morphine drip of worldliness.
Yeah.
We find ourselves not too dissimilar as to how Aaron and Moses found themselves in the desert with the Israelites grumbling and complaining.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget what happened. Moses goes off to talk to God up on top of the mountain, leaves Aaron behind. And what does Aaron do? The guy collapses, the guy folds, the guy gives in. And then Moses comes back and they're worshiping the golden calf. And he goes to Aaron. He's like, what's going on here? And so it's not uncommon that, we're going to find ourselves at our wits' end, especially when we're around people that we care about.
A lot of family, just drama. And that's
Yeah.
kind of their golden calf. They worship just that drama.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, right now, just for the audience, for the benefit of the audience, just a little context. Right now, we're at the end of the first week in October when we're recording this. So whether or not you hear this before or after, I think it'll apply. Thanksgiving dinner table. Come on, man. A lot of families are dealing with drama, right? And then you get the same thing come Christmas time. You get the same thing come Easter time when the family all gets together and you got this one not agreeing with that one and on and on and on. So, this is just something that it just is. And so how do you navigate through all of that? Well, what I would say is we would want to begin again, going back to the first commandment. If we're going to understand what it means to properly worship the true God. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's really the answer. If we learn to properly worship the true God, he is going to place us in a position where we are better prepared to deal with all of the difficulties that come along with people who simply are difficult people. And sometimes some of the people that we have to deal with, hopefully it's not family members, but people we work with who are just flat out against us. They have their way of viewing things. I've been in situations where I've worked with people. I worked with this one guy. I'm not going to say who it is because that's not a good thing to do. And I'm not going to say where it was because that's not a good thing to do. But I worked with this one guy who had a coffee cup and he put a sticker on the coffee cup that was a design. I don't even remember what the exact design was, but very clearly labeled underneath the design was the word heathen. So this guy was a proud heathen. And he knew where I was coming from. The guy knew he knew what my deal was. He knew exactly where I was coming from. He never shied away from promoting his heathenistic viewpoints. And he would speak about various matters from a heathenistic perspective. So we got to deal with this stuff. What are you going to do? You're not going to quit every job that has somebody who is a non-believer. No, you got to learn to navigate through it. And you have to learn to find a way. And so what the church gives us, which I think is a really, really good starting point, a really good foundation, is the 3 cardinal virtues. See, if we hold on to a virtuous life. Now, Dave, we've talked about this in the past.
Yes.
We talked about how as men, it seems as though the saints would agree with this. Their teachings of the saints would agree with this. A Christian sort of stoicism, a Christian-centered stoicism. Because if we understand the ancient Greek Stoics, and we understand how the perspective of the Stoic is not to allow your emotions to drive your actions and behaviors, but rather to allow reason to drive your actions and behaviors. So now we start to really Christianize that, and we look at the teachings of the church. And really, one of the greatest documents that lays out a very, very similar concept and Catholicizes it is the encyclical on faith and reason. The idea and the teaching behind the encyclical on faith and reason is that we are meant to use reason, which has been informed by faith, right? And so we take a look at what's laid out in front of us. and we make decisions and we address whatever it is. It doesn't matter what the issue is, but we address it from the perspective of reason, because we have to address the actual scenario. But that reason is informed by Catholic faith. And so that's why I'm saying that the idea of looking at how do we deal with difficult people, if we use a Catholic sort of stoicism, we don't allow our emotions to get the best of us. Are we going to do it perfectly? Probably not. Everybody kind of loses it every once in a while. That's called being human. But there's a big difference between something like that and always looking to have your feelings met. That's a big difference.
Yeah, I like that because what a lot of these people that are trying to fuddle us, go back to using C.S. Lewis's term,
Right.
they're trying to get into our head. They're trying to get
Yes.
us to be emotional. That's when we don't make the best decisions. That's when
No.
so like you're saying, so we got any tools that we can, what's a constant reminder that we could keep in our hearts to say, hey, this guy's messing with me.
Well, here's the first tool. Here's the first tool. One of the things that Father Chad Ripperger, who is a very well-known exorcist, one of the things that he has taught publicly is that the demons, the diabolical, they have access to our memories, and they have access to manipulate our emotions by presenting to us a past emotion. And so you got to remember that the demons, they've been studying us since we entered the world on an individual basis. So whatever demons are circling around me, or Dave, whatever demons are circling around you, they've been watching us since we came into the world. And so there's really, it's stupid for us to think that we're going to be able to get one over, right? And so what we have to do is we have to understand how to live a virtuous life. And when we tap into virtue, we are tapping into angels, okay? Because angels are the messengers of heaven. And for every virtue that exists, God has created an angel to have that virtue as kind of who they are, their purpose, their being. And so when we live a life of virtue as opposed to a life of vice, then we are tapping into heaven's army. And these are the tools, it's a supernatural toolbox. These are the tools that we can use.
Are you talking about the virtues as far as the choir of angels?
Yeah, well, I mean, every angel, you think of it this way. Every single angel that was ever created, every single angel was created for a specific purpose. And Dave, I think we've talked about this in the past. Now, everybody knows about guardian angels, right? Every one of us has been assigned a guardian angel. That is an angel of virtue. And that angel's job is to walk with us and to inform us. Now, we can choose to ignore him, which a lot of times people do. How many times have you had a gut feeling that you should do something and you ignore it? And it's like, oh man, that fell apart. Well, gee, I wonder why. And so we have our guardian angels that if we were more in tune with how heaven is speaking to us, then perhaps maybe we would be making better informed decisions. And so guardian angels, that's just one type of angel. And Dave, we've talked about this in the past, that when we enter into a vocation, whether the vocation is matrimony or the vocation is holy orders, God assigns another angel to assist with that vocation. So now every one of us that's the head of a family, not only do you got a house full of guardian angels for you, your spouse, and your kids, but then there's another angel who's looking over the family as a unit. And these are definitely tools. And so every one of these angels, we can assign a virtue. So just to use the term generically, virtues, when we say virtues, we're talking about heavenly warriors who are there to help us, to speak to us, to guide us, to be by our side and comfort us. The question becomes is, are we listening to that, or are we just acting deaf, dumb, and blind because it's more fun to stay connected to the worldly morphine drip of hedonism?
Yeah.
So here's the thing, and I know we're coming up against a break, so I'm just going to introduce this and we can unpack it on the other side. In specific, I want to talk about the three cardinal virtues of faith, hope, and charity, or otherwise known as love. And so we'll talk about this on the other side. But these three cardinal virtues of faith, hope, and charity are directly associated to the first commandment. And so if we're going to try to live out the first commandment so that we can avoid getting ourselves fuddled by dipping into the nonsense of, well, as long as I'm a good person, I'll get to heaven. No, sorry. Even sinners can be good to each other.
Family seems to be one that's so common, but for us guys, we've got to get up every morning. We've got to go put those work boots on, and we got to deal with people that are just miserable and will step on people to get to where they want to be and not even consider your feelings. They'll treat you with no dignity at all.
So for that, who is a better role model? We talk about the angels, we talk about virtue. Now we could talk about the saints. Who would be a better role model for the family than Saint Joseph? Saint Joseph is the patron saint of the family. And our entire show, Dave, is based on the domestic church, which is a fancy way of saying the family, or a more specific way, a rock solid Catholic Christian family.
Deacon?
So we can talk about that also.
That's all the time we have this week. Tune in next week at this same time for the conclusion of this broadcast.
Don't forget to check out Deacon Don Prendergast on Facebook at Through the Fire. You want to check him out on YouTube, you go to Through the Fire with Deacon Don Prendergast, Rumble at Deacon Don, and you can always check both of us out at www.castingthe.net. Go there and check out the Through the Fire page, and please leave a question that you'd like for us to answer.
Yes, and also, Dave, if I can jump in here.
Yep.
Whatever radio station you're hearing this show on, let the radio station know what you think. Send an email and share the program with other people.
So until next week, I'm David Fortin.
And I'm Deacon Don.
God bless.
The preceding program was a Spirit of Truth Radio Arts original program for CastingThe.net.